It is 10:03, so we are going to go ahead and get started this morning. I just wanted to welcome everyone to today's ECAP Recap webinar series. We're super excited that you are able to join us as we learn a little bit more about asbestos in Kentucky today. So, for those of you who may not know, my name is Shanna Weber, and I am an environmental education specialist with the Environmental Assistance Branch in the Kentucky Department for Environmental Protection. Now, before I hand our presentation over to today's speaker and we dive into the topic, I first want to do just a little bit of housekeeping and give you an idea of who ECAP is and how we could potentially work with you and help you in the future. So if you've been to any of our ECAP Recap webinar series before, you have probably heard me give this spiel a few different times. So don't worry, we'll make it short and quick, and we'll get to what you're here to learn about today, which is asbestos. Now, first things first, if you are here with us and you can hear me, you should be pretty much all set. Everyone besides our presenters are going to be in listen-only mode, so you will not have access to your microphone or camera. But if you do have any questions at all throughout the webinar today, we do ask that you use either the Q&A feature or the chat feature, and we will get to your questions throughout the presentations today. With that being said, I do want to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded, and I will be working to send out the recording of the webinar as well as slides from the presentations that are going to be used today. So now quickly, what is the Environmental Compliance Assistance Program, or for short, ECAP? Now, if you take anything away from my short little talk this morning, I'll say it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. ECAP is genuinely here to help. So the program itself has two main objectives. The first is going to be to help businesses understand and comply with Kentucky's environmental requirements. And then the second objective is to provide free and confidential assistance to Kentucky's businesses. And we do that in a few different ways that I'm going to cover in the next couple of slides. So ECAP acts as Kentucky's Small Business Environmental Assistance Program, or I'm going to refer to that as an SBEP. Now, SBEPs are requirements of the Clean Air Act, so our program itself is primarily funded by facilities' air emission fees. And for that specific reason, we do specialize in providing air quality assistance to small businesses in Kentucky. Now, SBEPs do have their own definition of a small business. It is going to be a business that is less than 100 employees. They have to be independently owned and operated, and they cannot be a major source of air emissions. Now, as I said, one of our major duties is going to be providing technical assistance, specifically with questions related to air quality. Now, additional technical assistance that we can do includes doing site visits. We can do potential emission calculations. And then specifically, again, for small businesses, we can even help develop entire air permit applications. So we can help fill out those required forms. We can help do those PTE calculations. And we can just help get that entire process started for small businesses. We also develop record keeping and reporting spreadsheets for air permit requirements. So for example, we have rolling total spreadsheets that we are able to share with small businesses, and we can really help out anybody with that if they have questions relating to record keeping and reporting. Now, Kentucky has actually opted to make our SB program multimedia, where some states may just focus specifically on air quality. So we do staff a phone and email hotline to take in any requests from companies and the general public. So if you have any questions regarding any air, water, or waste regulations, requirements, really any questions at all, you can give us a phone call or send us an email and we can help answer those questions. Now, if we don't know the answer, which that's a big possibility because there's a lot of questions out there, we can actually act as a referral service, and we can find somebody within the cabinet that will be able to best answer your question. We can also help facilities identify if regulations may be relevant to them, and we can recommend that they review certain regulations to identify if they're applicable for their regulation or for their operations. And then finally, we can also assist with new economic development projects. We can help small businesses identify potentially applicable permits, and we can help companies get into meetings with the different divisions within the Department for Environmental Protection all at once, rather than them having to go through each division individually. Now, aside from that technical assistance that we do, we also have a lot of educational assistance. So one way that we help educate the general public and facilities is through educational documents, which are housed in our online resource library. Now, these educational documents can be anything from quick one-page fact sheets to we even have 80 to 100-page compliance manuals that might cover every potential regulation a facility might need to be concerned with. We also have videos online for additional learning, and those are housed on our online learning modules webpage. So videos that may be related to air, water, and waste. We have a lot of videos relating to ACC and SAMR submittals and forms that are required for that. There's really just an abundance of videos on there. So if you ever have any questions, I really do encourage you to look on our online learning modules website. And then finally, we also hold training events and workshops like the one that you are attending today. So along with our ECAP Recap webinar series, we are currently hosting our Air, Water, and Waste 101 series, which is just an introductory level workshop regarding air, water, and waste regulations. Just next week, we do have our Water 101, which is a virtual event. So if you would like an introduction to, water permitting and compliance, feel free to check out that event. It might really be good for you to sit in on. So far, I've talked a lot about what ECAP can do, but I also think it is important to know what we cannot do. So ECAP does not issue NOVs or notices of violation, even if issues are seen during a site visit. We do not make any sort of regulatory determination or give requirements, but we do make recommendations to facilities. We don't have, as a program ourselves, we have no regulatory authority. So as I said, we are really here to help. We also do not interfere with any inspector activity or anything covered in an inspection report. We have an enforcement discretion that I'm going to show on the next slide, and that will not supersede anything inside or anything with inspector activity. And then finally, ECAP cannot act solely as a corrective action or a remedial measure following either an inspection report or a notice of violation. We can assist a facility meet requirements, but we cannot be the remedial measure in itself. So I've mentioned a few times now that our services are confidential and we do not report on potential violations outside of just a few exceptions. So if there is imminent danger to human health or the environment, that is something that we might have to report on. The Department for Environmental Protection did create an enforcement discretion policy specifically for our program. And the important part of this discretion is that facilities that work with ECAP are given a reasonable opportunity to correct violations before they are ever brought to the regulatory agencies. Now, finally, I just like to end my little talk about ECAP by sharing some accomplishments that our program likes to, talk about. So on average, we have 1,100 assistances per year, with 115 of those being detailed. 54% of our follow-up survey respondents are small businesses. We've received a 96% positive rating from respondents, with 94% saying that they would use ECAP again and recommend us to others. And then 87% of our clients do make changes based on the recommendations that we give. And these statistics are a little bit old, so I think those assistances are now closer to 1,500 assistance requests per year, which is awesome. So we're, like I said, we really are here to help. and we want to answer your questions. Now, with all of that being said, if you do have any additional questions regarding ECAP or any of the services that we offer, feel free to reach out to our hotline number that I mentioned earlier. At the end of today's webinar, I will have that phone number and email on the screen. So feel free to let us know if you have any questions. Like I said, if we don't specifically know the answer, we will find somebody that can help you out. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to our guest speaker today, Mr. Corey Groover. Corey is an environmental scientist within the Kentucky Division for Air Quality and is an air quality inspector. So Corey, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us today.
All right. Good morning, everybody. It's good to be here, I guess. Really, to tell you the truth, haven't spoke to this many people in a long time. So if I sound a little nervous in the beginning, it's probably because I am. But we should be able to get right into this, and I'm going to do my best to make my talk a little bit entertaining. Unfortunately, asbestos is dreadfully boring material, so we're gonna do as good as we can to at least make this a little bit fun. Let me see if I can get my stuff loaded up here. Well, while this is loading up, I can tell y'all a little bit about myself. My name's Corey Groover. I have been working for the Kentucky Department for Environmental Protection Division for Air Quality since 2019. And ever since I started, I have been the asbestos inspector. And I tell you, just each day I come to work and I do as best as I can. And that's kind of all we can expect. And I know everybody's on mute, but I'm imagining there was just tons of laughter with that one, or at least I hope there was. Okay, let's see.
Hey, I saw a few of those laugh buttons, so I think that was a good one there.
Okay, good. You gotta keep it interesting. Hey, while you're on here,
Yeah.
does my stuff look good? Am I in present mode or?
It looks perfect. Yep, you're good to go.
Okay. Okay. Well, like I said, my name's Corey. I've been doing this since 2019, and if you would have asked me before 2019 what I was planning on doing with my life, I would have not said being an asbestos inspector. But it's a really sweet gig, and it's good because somebody's got to do it, and it might as well be me. And well, one thing about it is I would have shaved this morning, but due to this time change, it's just got me all out of whack. And I was thinking if we really wanted to help human health, maybe we could figure out how to stop people from changing the time all the time. All right. Anyway, here we go. So, what is asbestos? Asbestos is a naturally occurring mineral that comes in the earth and is a great insulator, and it's a great fireproofer, and it does a lot of amazing things with building materials. And but unfortunately, it also has some not so good effects of it as well because it's killer. So a little brief history of asbestos, and I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with Plato's cave here, but I got a little diagram here at the bottom, and this is y'all, and this is me, and I'm casting these big shadows on the wall. So I say that, so don't be too afraid. It's not as bad as it sounds. But any technology sufficiently advanced could be considered magic by other people, kind of like when the Europeans got to the Americas. It was pretty magical that they came on those boats and stuff. So uh, salamanders are thought to be created by fire and associated with asbestos. A lot of spiritual kind of paranormal magic stuff that's associated with asbestos and salamanders back in the day. And I don't know, I just kind of find paranormal magical stuff kind of interesting. So I just threw that in there. Yeah, so here we go. Asbestos occurs naturally on every continent in the world. I don't think they mine it very hard in Antarctica, but it's everywhere and it occurs naturally. So it's not like a product that we have to do a lot to. It's just comes from the earth, and we use it. And it's believed that back in the way early days, like 4000 BC, that it was used for wicks for lamps and candles. And the Egyptian pharaohs were wrapped in asbestos cloth whenever they were getting prepared for the afterlife, because asbestos is just a nice protective material that'll keep you from getting burned up. So that's pretty cool. And the ancient Greeks and the Romans were the first to document that there were some harmful effects to people that dealt with asbestos a lot. And so from the Middle Ages to more recent time, asbestos was used mainly as fireproofing and in cloth materials. The Italian government in the 1800s was using asbestos fibers in its money, so that's pretty cool. And in the 1850s, the Parisian fire brigade was wearing jackets and helmets made out of asbestos. And around the turn of the century, there was industrial revolution really led to a steady growth of the asbestos industry. And if you go back to like pre-EPA era, the United States military really utilized a lot of asbestos in a lot of especially in boats. So if you had a boat that couldn't be burned up, then that was obviously a great advantage with war and stuff like that. So a lot of the old Navy war vessels were almost like, I mean, they were obviously steel, but there was a lot of asbestos in it. So there's a lot of folks. I have an uncle that recently passed away, and he was in the Navy way back in the day, and he died of he was old, so I mean that just happens. But he did have lung issues, but he was a mechanic for locomotives, so it was one of those things where I guess if you do enough bad stuff for your respiratory system, it just kind of eventually catches up with you. So the risk of asbestos. Asbestos is regulated because it is a known carcinogen, and inhaling it is the primary mechanism by which you have health issues from it. And in this here last bullet point, it says that ingestion and dermal contacts are also routes of exposure. But what you really don't want is it getting in your lungs, because your lungs have trouble processing the little fibers of asbestos. And after I discuss these like three principal lung diseases, I'll talk a little bit about the fibers. But essentially, it's really hard to get rid of them. If you would imagine that if something can't be burned, then your body would also have a lot of trouble processing that and just dealing with it and getting rid of it, because our bodies are actually really good at that. So the three principal diseases that we see with asbestos exposure, according to the experts, is asbestosis, lung cancer, and mesothelioma. And all of these are bad. And I'm sure that everybody, or most everybody, has heard of some commercial on TV talking about, have you or a loved one been exposed to asbestos? Um, if so, call our law firm. And so there's a lot of that out there, and so there is somewhat of a cash cow for asbestos exposure. So not that I have my fingers crossed or anything, but let's see, let's keep going here. So this is a little sketch of what's going on with asbestos. And yeah, you see these scary red balls. Let me get my pointer here. These scary red balls that look so familiar to the spike protein. They're gonna come in, and they're gonna get in your lungs, and they're gonna invade your little bronchioles and your little alveolus, and they're gonna clog it up. And like I said, if fire can't get rid of asbestos, then our bodies are gonna have a hard time processing it. So essentially, what happens, according to the experts, is these fibers get trapped in your lungs, and your body can't get rid of them. It can't dissolve them and make them go away. So it like forms these little cocoons over the asbestos fiber, and essentially it does that over and over again to the point where it actually makes it difficult to breathe. And one thing that's worth mentioning with these conditions is if you get exposed to asbestos, it's gonna be actually let me just roll on into this one. You get exposed to asbestos, and you're looking at a latency period of anywhere from 10 to 40 years. So it's not like it's going to happen immediately. So we don't want to be exposed because it could hurt us later on down the road. Oh, here we go. Okay, so one of the things that I learned when I started this whole deal was that if you're a cigarette smoker, then you're just drastically more likely to have issues from asbestos exposure. It's kind of like the I can't think of any appropriate examples, but it's kind of like when you mix things together and it makes it more intense. So I have to say, since we're right here on this, I have actually been nicotine free for it was either 6 or 7 weeks on Monday. So I'm really proud of that. I was actually a smoker for 25 years, and yeah, I was like 12 years old, and I was sneaking cigs from mom and dad, and I'd run out in the woods and smoke them. And man, I just thought I was the coolest thing ever. But anyway, 6 or 7 weeks ago, I quit. I read this book. It was called The Easy Way to Stop Smoking by Alan Carr. And they also have modern renditions that apply to vapes or like pouches or whatever those other like nicotine delivery systems are. So if there's anybody out there in Cyberland listening to me, and y'all have had if you've tried quitting smoking a bunch of times and had trouble, you might as well try the easy way instead of the hard way. It really worked for me, and it just it jacked my mind around, and it got me the right attitude, and I just quit, man. And I hate to toot my own whistle, but I just couldn't be more proud of myself. All right, so asbestos becomes regulated starting in the early 1970s with the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency. And man, if you look back on it, there was just a lot of stuff that happened there in the early 70s that you could almost say are just not good things for the country. I know in 71 we took our currency off the gold standard, so it was just all fiat after 71. And then also right there in that very same year, we started subsidizing our grain crops. And maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's not. We can debate about that later. I also have in this slide that Ukraine banned asbestos or made it regulated in 2022, which I could see where that would come from, and I'm sure that's all just for good things. So and funny, I have a link in here, and it's only an 8-second video of Ronald Reagan saying the 9 most disturbing words in the English language are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And so I couldn't get it to work in my little practice run, but Shanna actually said that when we got on here. So I was like, oh yeah, there you go. We're from the government. We're here to help. Okay, so regulated asbestos. So this word at the top of this slide, friable or friability, is kind of one of the most important words when it comes to asbestos, because as I've already alluded to, the trouble with asbestos is inhalation. So if you have a 9 by 9 floor tile that has 5% asbestos in it and it's intact and whole, there's a very small chance of any of that material getting into your lungs. But if you had something that was extremely dusty, it would actually be much easier to get in your lungs. So when we're talking about regulated asbestos, the regulated part of it is actually the friability. And friability just means that you're able to crush with your hand, like with hand pressure. So it would be like, like something like that, and it would turn to dust. And also in this slide, it mentions that there are it mentions that there are 1%. So with the asbestos regulations, the EPA asbestos NESHAPs 61 or 40 CFR 61 145 through 150. It says that any material that is greater than 1% asbestos if it's friable, is to be treated with all the regulations and all the rules, because we consider it to be asbestos if the material is greater than 1% asbestos. So I kind of had the little floor tile example there, and I was like, the solid floor tile that's 5% asbestos isn't going to get you as sick as a crumbled up bunch of insulation that has asbestos in it. So with regards to asbestos and asbestos content, what I will see when somebody's doing a project is they will send me a survey of materials that are potentially asbestos containing, and if they do contain asbestos, it'll say, oh yeah, this is 5% asbestos, or this is 70% asbestos. That's like the dangerous, scary stuff. And so it's all based on what percentage of asbestos is actually in the material that we're talking about. And I'll get into the OSHA stuff later, but anyhow, more than 1% asbestos able to crush in your hand and able to make dusty is regulated asbestos containing material. And in the asbestos world, we call that RACM, which is just an acronym for what I just said. The other end of the spectrum for asbestos is non-friable, and a perfect example of the non-friables would be the floor tile. Just and maybe like a caulk or something like that that was really rubbery. It would be hard to make a rubbery material dusty. So with regards to whether or not your asbestos is regulated, all depends on the friability of the material. All right, so there's also subcategories of the non-friable asbestos, and as I said, the regulated asbestos containing material is friable asbestos, meaning that you can crush it with your hand pressure. Okay, well, we have two different levels of non-friable asbestos. We have category one non-friable asbestos, and that is like the most difficult materials to make friable. And then so then you would also have category two non-friable, and that would be things like things that weren't category one. That and actually, let me get this piece of paper right here, and let's see. So category one non-friables like asphalt roofing, resilient floor covering, and other things like that would be considered category one non-friable. Um, so if you'll notice on here, let's see, non-friable ACM Part D that has a high probability of becoming or has become crumbled, pulverized, or reduced to powder by the forces expected to not on the material. Well, sorry, that didn't come out right. Anyway, so you have materials that are friable, you have materials that are non-friable. Um, all friable materials need to be addressed. Non-friable materials are it's more up for debate. So asbestos fiber types. I told y'all I was coming back to this. So the asbestos fiber types can either be serpentine or amphibole, and the serpentine asbestos is chrysotile, which is our most common type of asbestos that we see in building materials, and it counts for about 95% of all the asbestos found in U.S. buildings. But then we also have the amphibole asbestos types, and those two most common are chrysotile and amosite. And they are the amphibole asbestos types are much more rare and can also potentially be much more dangerous. So amosite in particular is brown, and it is the most difficult asbestos to remove. So in my almost 6 years with the state, I have seen amosite one time, and it was in an old furniture building, like a furniture showroom, and it was like the 2 feet by 4 feet ceiling tiles, and they had amosite in them, and that was I didn't realize what a big deal it was at the time, but now that 4 years have gone by since that, and I haven't seen anymore, it's I guess it was pretty cool that I saw it when I did. So lucky me. So there's also other asbestos-like materials such as tremolite, anthophyllite, actinolite, and vermiculite. And a lot of people know vermiculite because that is in soil amendments. And I don't know if we have any gardeners out there. I hope we do. Gardening's punk rock, and everybody should garden. But yeah, vermiculite is a potentially asbestos-containing soil amendment that I tell you, that's if I had any issues with asbestos, I'm not going to say that. So here we got chrysotile, which is the serpentine asbestos, and you can notice from the picture that the little fibers in there are actually wavy. So chrysotile is the serpentine asbestos, and it's the most common. And here's another little electron microscopy photo of chrysotile, and as you can see, a wavy appearance. So this is chrysotile, which is one of the amphiboles, and I'm not really sure if amphibole is the right way to say that, but I think of like the word like hyperbole, and I don't know. To me, it's just more fun to say amphibole, but I'm sure that if you wanted to, you could just say amphibole. But yeah, so that is what it is, and the amphibole fibers are more needle-like and straight, which makes them more asbestosy, I guess. Okay. So asbestos was used for tons of things, over 3,000 products. And here you can see some examples. And I already referenced the ceiling tiles that were amosite and things like acoustical plaster, boiler insulation. Boiler insulation is one of the kind of extra bad ones because you're looking at, I don't know, 50 to 90% asbestos containing material, and it's like all just packed on the boiler so that it didn't burn up back in the day when everybody had boilers in their basements. And y'all can read these electrical insulation, textured ceiling material, drywall joint compound, cement shingles, chlorine products, roofing felts, laboratory hoods, and cement pipes. Lots of stuff that asbestos was used for. Got some in here you can see some boiler insulation, some ceiling tile, and some floor tile. So okay, so here's a good example. We're gonna go back through and we're gonna reinforce the friable versus non-friable thing. So on the left we got ceiling tile, and if you can imagine, you could take one of those ceiling tile down, and more than likely you could just break a chunk off of it and crumble it up into powder. Same thing with the boiler insulation in the middle. So the ceiling tile and the boiler insulation would be considered friable asbestos, whereby the hard 9x9 floor tile on the right would be non-friable. So it would be difficult to make your floor tiles dusty compared to making your ceiling tiles or your other things dusty. All right, let's see some other uses: rope, corrugated paper, soil amendments, yarn, textured paints, spackling compounds, high temperature gaskets, hair dryers, pumps, popcorn poppers. That's pretty fun. So lots of stuff was used, asbestos was used for. So here we got an example, and this should be like a nice roll of just a bunch of slides of different asbestos uses and things like that. So we got asbestos shingles, and I bet some of y'all have seen these old style roofs that look like the one in this photo, and yeah, it's just cool to see those, and I'm sure they lasted forever. But and actually, speaking of asbestos shingles, I just got a roof, and man, talk about a lot of money, and I'll leave it there. So asbestos uses, we got the thermal systems insulation. When I started, um, this is kind of the bad stuff. This stuff, this air cell material. As you can see, there's little holes, and what it is it's paper, but it's coated in asbestos. So it's essentially paper that doesn't burn. So as you might could imagine, this would be very easy to make dusty, make friable, and so whenever I have an abatement company that's going to be removing some thermal systems insulation, they will send me a notification, and they'll tell me how much RACM, or regulated asbestos containing material, is involved in the removal. All right. So here we got some a baking pad and asbestos parchment paper, which I thought was pretty cool. Like I said, there was the heck, this is back when stuff was actually made in America. So they were actually they were making all kind of stuff and with asbestos, and it was leading to it was a technology. So as for example, on this one, that girl looks really hyper in the picture, but they had ironing boards that were a combination of aluminum and asbestos, and it would cut your ironing time in half. So as I just said, we are this is when we were a true manufacturing society, so they were just putting asbestos in everything they could. Here's a popcorn popper that is also asbestos containing. I'm not really sure. I think it would be the heating element in the popcorn popper that would be asbestos-y. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Here's more of the corrugated fireproof paper, and to me, it's just really cool that they can have fireproof paper. It's like I don't know, it's like a leak-proof screen, or I don't know. It just seems like they kind of contradict each other. Um, oh, here we go. We got some vermiculite over here on the left. I was talking about all the gardeners out there, and it is definitely time to start your seeds. If you haven't done that, then maybe you should just buy them from a store later. Um, let's see, the attic insulation, and over here, for some reason, I can't see this very good, but hopefully y'all can. And it says vermiculite, and it says asbestos free, I do believe. But lots of product were used for this, and these are brakes. And apparently, the braking industry of like commercial motor vehicles is one of the industries where asbestos containing materials are still permitted, and we'll get into some of that here in a little bit. But yeah, the brakes, and look at this guy. He's just spraying some asbestos. And so it just wasn't thought of as a health problem, so nobody really cared. But it wasn't but like what, 70 or 80 years ago that they were giving everybody lobotomies that were sad. So I mean, 50 years from now, hopefully we turn around and say, man, we were crazy as heck in 2025. So, or at least I hope that. Let's see. Okay, we got woven wicking, and we got the gasket packers, the valve stem packing, and that's also a very popular asbestos containing material. We got asbestos shoes that were, walking through fire with asbestos shoes. And if you presented that card, you'd get 10 cents off. I thought that was pretty cool. Hmm. Okay, so we got let's see what we got here. We got gypsum, we got joint compound, and other building materials that all had asbestos. But not only would the asbestos in the material, not only would it make the material fireproof, but it would also strengthen, it would like increase tensile strength of said material. Okay, and you are seeing that right. And they were even smoking cigs that had asbestos containing filters. And wow, this is another one of those things like lobotomies where it's like how different it was. And you think about the corporate influence and capture of those cigarette companies on people, and it was just the norm to advertise your cigarettes, and just like other things. And so there was asbestos containing cigarettes, and then there was also asbestos containing fake snow, which as advertised, it is fireproof. So you could have your fake snow on your Christmas tree, and you would be also potentially preventing a fire hazard. And here we got sweet Dorothy, and she has just fallen asleep in the poppy patch, and the asbestos snow has been sprinkled all over her. It turns out there was one of the major avenues for fake snow and creating fake snow in Hollywood was asbestos. It was nice and fluffy and light, and it would sink real slow, and it'd be real pretty, and it'd be pretty on camera and all that stuff. And and yeah, so moving right along, and all right. So unfortunately, all the fun stuff's over, and I'm gonna try to do the best I can with this to make it somewhat entertaining. But basically, we have I think I actually might. Oh, never mind. So we have two major areas of asbestos regulations. We have the asbestos NESHAPs, which would be you can see them on there, the bottom two, and then we have the AHERA regulations, and just I know that I use those acronyms all the time, but NESHAPs stands for National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants, and AHERA stands for Asbestos Hazardous Emergency Response Act. And so the NESHAPs rules apply to renovations and demolitions of commercial buildings, and the AHERA regulations apply to um, schools, public and private, kindergarten through 12th grade. And like I said, down here at the bottom, we got some regulations of concern. Is the OSHA regulations, and I do not regulate the OSHA regulations. Therefore, I do not hold my contractors responsible to the OSHA standards. That is up to them on that. So the main thing where this shows up is the 1% asbestos that I talked about earlier. So um, you got a material that you've shown is less than 1% asbestos. According to the EPA regulations, that material can be removed as if there was no asbestos involved. Well, if you look at the OSHA regulations, it says that any amount of asbestos in a material is sufficient enough to call that material asbestos, therefore utilizing all the regulatory requirements of the abatement slash removal of the material. And so if OSHA wants to enforce that, they can, but I do not, because I think it just adds a financial burden to my contractors and their clientele. So, as I referenced earlier, the NESHAPs regulations, which apply to commercial buildings, they are, but they are, so your home is exempt from this. So the EPA only cares about asbestos in commercial buildings, and they don't really mind, or I don't want to say they don't mind, but asbestos in a home is unregulated. And we can leave that at that. But if you were ever wondering if you need to do anything with regards to your home and asbestos, you just do whatever you want to do, and I think you'll be all right. But that is what we refer to as the single residential exemption for the NESHAPs. So that means if you got a house, then you don't have to apply all these regulations. And I think I have a slide coming up that says this, but for the EPA NESHAPs regulations, the two major things that I'm looking for with a demolition is a notification that tells me that you're going to do a demolition or a renovation, and I have to receive that notification 10 days before your project starts, and that is 10 business days, and that is you wouldn't believe how many conversations I've had about that, and I tell them, like, I know that it don't make no sense, but I just enforce it. I don't make the rules. And then the other part of the NESHAPs that is like the end all be all is you want to survey your structure for asbestos. And there's companies out there that survey stuff for asbestos, and hopefully these companies are certified with Kentucky, and hopefully the individuals that work for these companies are accredited. So if you want to remove asbestos in Kentucky, you have to get accredited, and you have to you have to pay to play. And so there is an initial fee associated with becoming a certified abatement entity, and there are certain trainings that are required of individuals that want to be accredited for a particular asbestos abatement entity. And sorry if this stuff kind of flip flops back and forth. I was trying to put it in the most like congruent and flowy method, and well, it just is what it is. So keep going through here. Here we go. So this is the asbestos in schools, which is the AHERA regulations, which were created, if I'm remembering correctly, in 1986 or seven. And um, and basically it says that all schools, K through 12, public or private, must have an AHERA management plan, and every 3 years, all school buildings that have asbestos must have a reinspection. And so here's an acronym for you to chew on. The ACBM is the acronym meaning asbestos containing building materials, and that is associated with AHERA. So we also have ACMs, which are just asbestos containing materials, and those can pertain to anything. But really what the difference is with the asbestos in the schools. What we were concerned about was children being exposed to asbestos inside the school. So asbestos containing building materials are referring to just all the materials that a child or occupant or teacher or anybody else could potentially be exposed to in a school. So that doesn't include like that would like skip out on like roofing tar or something on the roof. That wouldn't apply. And if there's a clear barrier between that outside material and your student, then we're not as worried about potentially exposure. Okay, so the other kind of main pillars of the AHERA are that every year you got to notify parents and faculty, and that notification has to be posted in plain sight somewhere in the building. And all local education agencies must have an asbestos designated person. And in some cases, your designated person can be your management planner. In some cases, your management planner is your designated person. And in some cases, you have a management planner that's separate from your designated person. So it just depends on the school and what they're, I guess it just depends on how much asbestos they're having to deal with. Because if you can imagine, if these regulations started in 1986, and we've had, wow, 38 years to do this management plan thing, that a lot of these asbestos containing materials have been removed over the years. And obviously, the less asbestos you have in your school, the easier it is on everybody. So everybody wants to try to do that if they can. Okay, so you might be asking, well, Corey, I know that asbestos was banned, in the early '80s from most building materials. So what about a building that's a new construction? Well, if you have a school building that's a new construction, there will oftentimes, hopefully, in the management plan, they'll have a little document that says, "Hey, I'm the architect, and I didn't specify any asbestos containing building materials when I designed this project." And so that is our safeguard to make sure that everybody's covered. All right, asbestos NESHAPs, the other major EPA regulation that I deal with, and this deals with only commercial buildings. And so what you have is you have renovations and you have demolitions. And a demolition isn't probably what you think when you think demolition. You're probably thinking a wrecking ball swinging and a pile of debris there. Fortunately not. And unfortunately, a demolition is when you take out any load-bearing or supporting structural member of a facility. And man, talk about getting into some hair splitting business that I just don't really care to get into. You can really have some long drawn out debates on what's a demolition and what is not. But if a load bearing wall is removed from a building, then I would consider that a demolition. So so I already talked about the notification. Let me see what my next slide is, see if it would be helping us. Okay, so I already talked about notification. So all demolitions require notification. And the other aspect of that is renovations, which is just whenever, and this is renovations when asbestos is being disturbed. So I only get notified for a renovation when a certain amount of asbestos is being removed. So if there was let's just say there was an office building, and in the basement they had an old boiler that was that hadn't been used for years, and they were gonna remove this boiler from this office, and they were gonna put in a water filtration system so that whoever this was could have nice clean water. And just so in this boiler room there was a 6 foot piece of pipe that was covered in that air cell insulation, that papery asbestosy stuff. Well, if there was an abatement company removing that little piece of asbestos, I would hope that they would remove it in compliance with the regulations, but I wouldn't have to be notified on it. Now, if there was a building that the whole entire basement was pipe runs and chases where pipes went out from this boiler and it went all over the building, and let's just say there was 200 linear feet of pipe. In that case, I would get notified, and the abatement contractor would have to wait the 10 days. So I have on this slide here, we got reportable quantities. So if a renovation involves the removal of more than or equal to 160 linear feet, 260 square feet, or 35 cubic feet, that abatement entity or that owner of that building is required to get the materials, the regulated asbestos containing materials, removed by an accredited abatement company. And so, yeah, next little bullet point there, you can see if the abatement involves reportable quantities, the project must be carried out by a certified abatement entity, and that entity must notify me 10 days before the renovation starts. Okay, so the asbestos NESHAP is required before demolitions, and it is the notification is not required for asbestos in good conditions for buildings where the material will not be disturbed. So that's another thing that I should brush on while we're here, because if you have asbestos in your building and it's in good condition and it's not dusty and it's not friable, it's not a sin. You know what I mean? It's not a bad thing to have asbestos. It's just a bad thing to have asbestos in a building and let it get in a poor condition that would be friable. So I just saw a notification for 5 minutes left, so I'm going to kind of power through this a little bit. So I touched on the thorough inspection. So like I said, the two main tenets of the asbestos NESHAP's regulations is I need a notification if you're tearing something down or removing more than a certain amount of asbestos, and I need a copy of a thorough asbestos survey. So what it is companies can come in and if what we call suspect materials. So for example, in my office here, I have ceiling tiles that would be a suspect material. My walls are made of drywall and joint compound that would need to be sampled. And if the ceiling, or I'm sorry, if the floor had floor tiles, we would want to sample those as well. Okay, so this bottom bullet here, this is definitely something that's up for debate and debatable even among inspectors within the state. Some non-friable asbestos, mostly Category 1 stuff, may be left in the building during demolition if it can be proven that the materials will not be rendered friable. And so as long as, if let's just say a track hoe was tearing down an office building, well, as long as he wasn't driving back and forth across this office building, let's just say this office building in its main room had some asbestos containing floor tiles that were 4% asbestos. Well, if this fella is not driving across his demolition project and he is just scooping and loading, as well as having a water source on this demolition project, then by law I don't have to make him take those floor tile out. And and oh, and thank you for the clarification for the reportable quantities. I had that backwards, but anyhow, Not all asbestos has to come out before demolition, but I would encourage anybody that was in that situation to contact their local asbestos inspector and talk to them about what they would have them do. Um, so for the Kentucky accreditation program, we have 5 offerings. You can be an abatement supervisor, an abatement worker, a management planner, an inspector, and a project designer. And all of these are different trainings that last different amounts of time. And here we can see that the asbestos worker is a 4-day training, supervisor is a 5-day training, inspector is a 3-day training, the management planner is a 5-day training, and the project designer is another 3-day training. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, you don't have to do all these every year. We have annual refreshers, and I'll say for the Kentucky asbestos inspectors, every year we have 2 days of refresher training, and we have the management planner, inspector, and supervisor. I believe is our 2-day refresher training that we do every year to keep us all up to snuff on everything. Okay, the accreditation process, you want to attend an EPA approved training course um, and have that training certificate available. And I know that our asbestos person that you would contact in Frankfurt used to be Emma Morio, but I believe now the man with the plan is James Eli Caudell, and his email will be at the end of this. And if y'all have any questions and don't like what I'm saying, you can always ask him and maybe get you a different answer. Okay, this is talking about refresher training and doing all of that. We got that. Um, Certifications. You want to have at least one accredited supervisor for an asbestos abatement company. You want to set up and obtain approval for a compliance demonstration. And this is one other thing that's worth mentioning. If you are an asbestos abatement entity looking to do business in Kentucky, then well, the 2 main tenets of what you would need to do would be pay your initial fee to play and conduct a compliance demonstration, which is where the company will construct a decontamination unit, which is what we use to keep our workers and everybody safe when we're removing asbestos. And essentially, they either create a fake containment or they create a real containment. And however that goes, we go to the site, we check out what they've done, we make sure that they know what they're doing, and we ask them a whole bunch of questions pertaining to asbestos to make sure that they know what they're doing. And if they do those things, then they're good to go with abating asbestos in Kentucky. Okay, Kentucky has reciprocity with any EPA approved asbestos trainer, but it does not have reciprocity with out of state licensing. Um, Finding accredited persons. So if you're a business owner that has asbestos in your building and you're looking to find some asbestos abatement entities, you can go to air.ky.gov/pages/asbestos information, and there will be a list of all state accredited asbestos professionals in Kentucky. Okay, last major subject is asbestos disposal. Certified contractors must use approved contained landfill for the disposal of rackham. Non-friables can be treated differently, and essentially a residential disposal is unregulated because there's no requirement to thoroughly inspect. All right, and this is my contact information. And as I referred to Eli earlier, our asbestos boss, he does a good job of holding down the fort. And if you have any questions, you can direct them to him or me. And I would be glad to help y'all out in any way I could. And I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything, but I'll be glad to do my best to answer them.
Thank you so much, Corey. This was great. I know we're over a little on time, but that is okay with me if we stick on for a few minutes. If you have the time to see if any questions roll in. Let's
Yes,
see, it looks like we just got one. Is rackham considered hazardous waste?
that is a yes. Yes, it is, and landfills have specific requirements on how and where they dispose of that material at the landfill, and they are also required to like take GPS coordinates of that spot so that they'll know asbestos is there, and they will know that they can't just go over there and dig up a bunch of stuff. Because as you can imagine, if you had some nasty friable asbestos that was disposed of at the landfill, you probably wouldn't want to dig that up and potentially expose a bunch of people.
Let's see, are there any other questions? Of course, if you don't have them now too, feel free. I'm sure Corey doesn't mind at all if you reach out to him with those questions later on. But it does look like, um, would it be possible to be emailed a copy of the presentation? Corey, if you want to share that with me, I can send it out to everyone along with the recording.
That sounds perfect. I can send you a copy as soon as we get off here.
Perfect. Sounds good. Yes. So I will be sending the recording as well as the presentations used during today's webinar. Just give me maybe a day, and then I'll have that sent out. Let's see. How long is a survey good for in Kentucky?
That is a great question. That is a debatable question that we have talked about in asbestos inspector meetings, and I would say that it would be on a case by case basis is how I would do that. If you got an old abandoned building that's been sitting there for years and nobody's been in it, and you had a survey that was from 2019, if it didn't look like that anything had changed, I would probably be okay with using that survey from 5 years ago. But that's one of those things where that would be the inspector's discretion. So if you had a survey that was antiquated and you were in a region that was not the Paducah region, then I would suggest contacting your local asbestos inspector and seeing what they thought about it. Great question, though.
I'm not seeing any more questions right now, but again, feel free to reach out if anything does come up. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one last time. Thanks again, Corey, for you coming and presenting today. I know I learned so much from this, so I am sure everyone else in this meeting did as well. And I just wanted to end. I know we're a little over time, but just wanted to end by giving the contact information for the Environmental Compliance Assistance Program again. Feel free to keep this email and phone number, in your notes somewhere close. If you ever have questions about any air, water, or waste regulations, feel free to reach out to us, and we would be more than happy to help. And with that, we want to thank all of you all for joining as well today. I'll be sending out a link to all of our future events, our ECAP recap webinars, as well as our virtual workshops. If you do have any questions about any of those, feel free to reach out to us as well. We hope you all have a great rest of your day, and we'll potentially see you again soon. Thank you all.